Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth DiAlto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that's always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value, especially in the context of everything that falls under the topics of healing, growth, leadership, and creativity. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. I'm the creator of a practice called Wild Soul Movement. My flagship year-long online women's circle is called Power. I run virtual new moon circles every month, weekend workshops all over the planet throughout the year, and I work with clients one-on-one. I also started doing stand-up comedy for fun in 2018. So this is a place where you can come with your multiple talents and passions to be encouraged, nourished, and cultivated. There's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show also aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. The main intention here is to contribute to creating a kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths, and they trust in themselves and in life and recognize that we need each other. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth DiAlto. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating or review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here, and here we go. What's up, everybody? This is episode number 315 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth DiAlto. And today, my dear friend, Rebekah Borucki, is back for her third visit on Truth Telling. And this time, her big truth is around realizing that she has influence and is not the underdog she's perceived and positioned herself as for most of her life. So we talked a lot about motherhood. Bex has a book that just came out in August called Managing the Motherload. We got into mom guilt, going after your dreams, finding a balance in relationships. We talked about the difference between raising young children and having older children. We talked about dealing with conflicts, giving kids the space and support to be who they're meant to be, and much, much more. As always, when Bex is in the house, it is a juicy and deep conversation. So enjoy this, share it up. Especially if you have any mom groups or mom friends, if you're in any Facebook groups for moms and things like that, it's a great episode to share. We touched on so many things. This is not an episode about parenting. This is an episode about the journey of being a mother. So a lot of conversations focus on the parenting aspect, but this is more about how wild and amazing it is and hard it is to actually be a mom and to evolve through the journey of being a mom. So if you think this would benefit any of your people, go ahead and share it up. Like I said, it's episode number 315. So the show notes, links to anything we talked about can be found at untameyourself.com/315. And just to remind you, applications are officially open for the Sacred 2020 experience. This is a year-long journey. It's a retreat-based experience that I'll be taking 12 high-powered, high-performing, high-achieving women on. The container is meant to explore joy through travel, connection, and restoration. Y'all, we need some rest. We need some self-care. So we're going to explore all of that, as well as in the container, do some spiritual, some personal, some professional growth, some healing that needs to be done. So it's really going to be a multi-layered, multifaceted experience. You can head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/sacred for some basic details and to get the application. And then all the other nitty-gritty details I will be sharing with people once they apply through a personal conversation. There's no big fancy sales page. This is more of an exclusive invitation because it's going to be a very a very deep and life-altering experience I'm super, super excited to lead. So again, check that out at wildsoulmovement.com/sacred. And let's get into today's show. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Doing much better. Thank you.
So for anyone listening, doing much better from what? Give them context.
A racist incident in a white spiritual woman circle. You know, typical.
I shouldn't be laughing. Why am I laughing?
Because I think that, well, first of all, if you don't laugh, you're going to be crying or angry all the time, yes, right? Cliche, but it's true. But also because it's pathological, and it's so typical that it's just like, I should have known better before going to the sacred feminist women's circle. Oh, shit. That something bad was going to happen.
You and me both, sister. I had this experience with a man the other day that I was like, well, should have seen that coming.
Live and learn.
Live and learn. Live and learn. And the thing is, I don't want to become so jaded that I don't ever trust people from dominant groups.
No, that hasn't happened for me yet. Not at all.
Yeah. It's just like we keep going and stuff, and then every once in a while we still get like stomped on.
Well, I'll tell you that I like to learn my lessons not through trauma. I'd rather my lessons just come handed to me easily. But that experience did open up a lot of fantastic conversations, and not just conversations, but actual action. For the facilitator of the circle is taking really fast and I believe will be effective action. And it also empowered me to speak up in some places that I was kind of delegating the responsibility to someone else that I know wouldn't have done it as well as I could, coming directly from me. So yeah, it was a good experience in the end. But for all the white women who are watching right now, please do not encounter a woman of color in a sacred space and ask her to talk about racism.
Oh my God.
Or to teach you about racism.
Oh, Jesus.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Right?
Especially if she says no, please don't continue
to
talk, which is what happened. Yeah.
Like you owe anyone anything. So fascinating. So I had an experience this week. I met this man I was really excited about, and his behavior, you know what I'm realizing more and more? That until we know people's integrity, till we like have receipts, until we can see it, rubber meets the road, who they are, words are the cheapest thing in the world. They just are.
Yeah.
Because anyone can say the right thing. And also too, I will share, I am, people usually talk about projection. It's negative, like you're projecting your own bullshit onto people. I have a positive projection problem. I just see the absolute best in people. Like I'm just assuming they're coming from a good place, their heart, and it's like, it's not naivete. It's just like, well,
it's probably not a problem. It's probably not a problem. I mean, yes, we get, sometimes we get stomped on. Sometimes, things don't go our way. But I think that both of us have really good relationships and really honest relationships in our lives because we are trusting and open and we, expect the same from other people.
And I'd rather see the best in people than become super cynical and jaded.
Yeah, me too.
I would. And like you said, and this was a quick turnaround on this one. Listen, I was like, all right, well, see you later. Not doing, I don't mess with this, I wasn't even upset. I was like, okay, moving on.
Yeah.
So, how's your body feeling today? What's going on? Body, how you feel?
So good. I had a therapy appointment today. So I'm fresh off of a therapy appointment. Gosh, I love talk therapy. People knock it and I've returned to it recently, but it's really good to spend a full 60 minutes unloading, talking about myself, and the person doesn't even have to respond.
To a qualified professional, though.
Of course. Yeah, because she knows how to hold that space.
Yes.
It's so good. I leave there. It's so funny. Today I left and I was opening the door and saying goodbye to the beautiful receptionist, Maria, who I just adore. I love the whole practice. I just looked at her and exhaled and shook my head and said, I love therapy. And she's like, yeah, it's good. It's good.
You know, it's so funny. So I tagged you on Facebook, so I know you saw I was interviewing you and Jada Selner today, and I had Jada before you, but your interviews, you're just going to come out before hers. I think yours is on September 9th, and hers then will be on 9+7, the 16th. So, we opened up that conversation.
9/9.
She was talking about therapy.
Yeah.
So I guess that's going to be the theme that starts the fall season of the Truth Telling podcast.
It's good for everybody. My husband just started. I
love that.
got one of my kids in it.
You know what, though, about therapy?
Mm-hmm.
I discovered this because a person in my family who really needed therapy got into therapy this year, but they are a person who is not honest with themselves about how they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been going to therapy for months, and it's not helping.
You get what you give. You get what you give, but it's not my job to manage anyone else's therapy experience. So I really don't even worry about what my husband or my kid is saying.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, it's funny because we've talked about this before, but a practice of mine, you're laughing, you're so funny.
I'm just cracking up today. I'm very amused by life. Keep going.
A practice of mine over the past several years now has been radical honesty. And I'm talking about the deep, dark honesty down to the little white lies that we tell our children from day to day. Like, oh, the bell on the ice cream truck means it's empty. Like they run out. So I can't lie anymore. And even in the way that I tell stories, in the way that I represent other people, and my younger sister, I call her my little sister, but she's 37, read my book, and she called the other day and she said, oh, I finished your book. It was really good. And I said, really? Because I value her opinion. She's very well read. And she's like, no, it's good. She goes, but I'll tell you, the way you told the stories, especially where I was involved and I was there, it was really how it happened. And I said, well, yeah, I wanted to tell the truth of the story. And she goes, but people don't do that. They'll either exaggerate or embellish or like change the tone a little bit. But it's really, really important for me to live in complete integrity and full honesty. So, yeah.
I want your opinion on something now because
oh, yeah.
I am the same.
Uh-huh.
And I was in London this summer and I met up with a buddy of mine and he was basically selling me on the advantages of lying. And I was like,
is this a good friend that you tell things to?
It's not like inner circle. It's
okay.
Like outer rung, but he's great.
Okay.
One of the few male friendships I've been able to maintain because when I met him, he was like, listen, I'm super attracted to you, but I think you're so great. I would much rather be friends with you. So I want to be such good friends with you that people think we're sleeping together, but we're never going to. And I was like, great. This is actually why I can't maintain a lot of male friendships. Good to know. That's never a thing. Don't have to worry about it. We can just be friends. He's a character.
That's so interesting.
So interesting. Obviously, he's a character. So he was telling me, he's like, oh, no. You got to lie sometimes. And I was like, say more. But he was telling me, so he's 40 now. He's super good looking, tall, fashion photographer, travels the world, really interesting person in life, hilarious, as I mentioned. And so, but he is not a monogamous person. So he is in a relationship, but it's open. But he always gets sat when he goes to weddings at like the singles table. So he got tired of people asking why he was single. So he just started making up stories. So like he even told me one, he was like, someone was like, oh, why are you single? And he was like, my wife died.
Oh my gosh.
And they were like, oh my God, he's like, that's fine. How's your chicken? Like,
oh my gosh.
I was like, right.
That's
and someone
funny.
on here who maybe has had a spouse that passed is like, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
How I feel about someone, is someone going to be like, sorry, my dog died to get out of something? Like, who wants to like wish that on anything? But he doesn't have a spouse. I don't know. But so the question I'm going to ask you is, do you think there are ever any situations where it's appropriate to lie? And there's one I've been leaning into recently myself, but I want to hear your answer first.
This is very interesting because I was in a therapy session with my kid yesterday and this came up and it was around safety.
Yeah.
And I broadened the definition of safety to include their emotional safety.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, in that case, I would say I told my child to lie and let the adults handle it. Let the adults handle the truth
Mm-hmm.
of the matter. So of course, to protect your safety, but also your heart.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found in adult situations outside of that, especially around emotional safety, it's better to set a boundary than to find yourself backed into a corner where you have to lie.
Right.
So if I'm sitting at a table and someone's asking me personal questions about my marriage, I'll say, I don't really like to talk about my marriage.
Yeah.
Moving on. So then I don't, yeah, I've been in very few situations where I felt I had to lie.
Right.
Yeah.
The area where I'm leaning into is 100% about safety, right? Where you're either dealing with someone who is a threat to you in some way,
Mm-hmm.
an abuser, known abuser to you or others,
Mm-hmm.
someone who has a mental illness
Mm-hmm.
where saying the truth could trigger an episode for them.
Mm-hmm.
Or like in a dating situation where you're just dealing with like someone's raging ego and you're like, it literally, I just need to diffuse the situation and get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to actually speak the full truth and nothing but the truth to this person right here who can't handle it. So I think it also then becomes a conversation of like transparency, privacy, and discernment,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily like lie. Like, what is an actual lie?
Right. Right. What is an actual lie? I mean, for me, there's the reality, there's the facts of the matter, and am I representing them correctly? Especially, it's easy for me to tell the truth about myself. Where it gets tricky is when other people are involved, like writing a book that has a big memoir aspect to it, where a lot of other people that are still living and in my life and that I love and care about and respect, I have to talk about them because it serves the story. But how can I do that in a way that honors their privacy and still tells the truth? So it's a fine line.
That is a fine line. And, and I think this is the difference. So the example I gave you of my friend, that's a bold-faced lie, right? My wife died.
Yes.
I won't do stuff like that. Will I not share the full truth? Yeah. Will I be selective about who gets what part of the truth? Yeah. And some of that is just about like privacy. Like you said, I went to a gathering a couple months ago with a group of people that always wants to do some kind of like vulnerability exercise as part of a social gathering. And I'm just like, what? Like, we just hang out. We just hang out.
Man.
And I realized I opted out. Like I left early. I left before we got into that part of the evening, the forced vulnerable part of the evening, because I'm like, I know like two of these people well. I don't know anyone else. And I don't have any need to share with this depth with these people. You know what I mean?
Yes. So this is what happened at that sacred feminist women's circle the other day. I'm sorry to laugh because all of those terms are legitimate, but altogether it was a lot.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster, and it was.
Right. So there was a place where we were not asked to be vulnerable with private information, but we were asked to do something, which was to call in our ancestors through our maternal line. So to say, I am the daughter of, the granddaughter of. And because it was this circle of all white women, I'm not used to being in those spaces that I'm not running. I'm used to being in spaces with a lot of white women, but usually I'm facilitating.
Same.
So I'm in this space, I'm not running it. And I said when it came around to me, I'd rather not, I'm feeling uncomfortable, maybe unsafe. So I'd rather not call in other energies because I do believe in that.
Yeah.
I'd rather not bring them in here. So I kept that part of me private.
Yeah.
Because it was vulnerable and it felt it was a safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the responsibility of the facilitator. That you didn't feel safe is not about you. It's about their space. So interesting. Yeah. So all of that said, little tangent. What's the truth that's having a big impact on your life right now?
The truth that's having a big impact on my life right now is that I know you sent me this question. I didn't think about it,
Okay.
but the truth is, and it's new this weekend, is that I have influence, that I'm not this little tiny underdog that I've positioned myself to be for too long. That's gotten me out of taking responsibility.
Listen, for those of us who know you, thank God you're finally realizing that you have influence. Duh.
Not duh. You know,
Duh to us, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's so fascinating how we see ourselves versus how other people see us. Keep going.
So you could see even from looking at old content of mine where I talk a lot about my mental illness, where I talk a lot about coming from poverty, and I focus very much on what makes me an outsider and what makes me different. And I didn't see it as problematic because I saw it as me relating to other people who felt like outsiders. And it worked. Look, I have a wonderful community. I attracted a lot of amazing people to me because I was very honest and open and vulnerable with those parts of me. But the truth of the matter is, is that now I am someone with a lot of privilege, financial and otherwise. I have this big platform. I'm not that person anymore. I'm a person who can go into CEOs and vice presidents of major publishing houses and say, hey, we need to change something, and it happens.
Yeah.
So I am in that truth now.
Yes.
I'm acting on that truth.
As your friend, I'm like, yes. I'm every gift that's like, yes, 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 yes.
You were the queen of gifts.
I'm the MC Hammer, Running Man. Oh, yes, gif. I love that one.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to send it to you when we hang up.
Thank you.
So how does that, I know this is newer.
Mm-hmm.
How is it changing how you are orienting in your world?
It's changing my outside world. And I'm seeing that I'm very capable of giving opportunities to other people, of creating things that are in service to the people I care about most, which are Black and Indigenous women. And the LGBTQ community, but really first Black and Indigenous women, if I'm being honest. I'm telling the truth. So it's changing my outside world. And I think that that's really fabulous. And because I'm speaking up, it's shifting how I'm seen professionally, and I'm being invited to be part of really important things.
Yeah.
Which I'm very excited about. Just this morning, as we're recording this, I had a meeting with Yoga Alliance as part of a new task force that they've created. And I'm so honored and so blessed to be a part of that. So on equity.
Who watches a lot of crime shows, I'm also thoroughly excited that you're part of a task force.
It is a very cool name.
You're very important.
Yeah.
And again,
I love this podcast.
I love you. Like, we got to have fun with shit. You're right. Like, this is one of my, what was the thing I had shared? Yo, this might have been one of the things that made me laugh the hardest in the history of the internet. You commented on it and we were laughing, and some people were being like, I wish this wasn't funny, but it was like, we have to laugh. The thing that's Ivanka Trump had tweeted, white supremacy is a form of terrorism and needs to be eradicated. And someone responded to her, the call is coming from inside the house.
I know. I'm such a true crime show. I can see it.
The call is coming from inside the house. Right? I wish it wasn't funny, but we're gonna let ourselves find humor in things so that
I'm not mad about Trump anymore. Yeah, I'm not mad about Trump anymore. I'm done. I'm not looking at posts about him. I'm not sharing it. It's like, water is wet. Trump's a racist. Let's talk about other things. Let's talk about things that we can do.
Yeah, that's right. Let's talk about things that we can do. And the same, like, I selectively tune into election-oriented things. Like, I want to know what's going on, but like, there are specific places where I'll tune in to learn and gather the information I need. Because what I'm not here for is everyone making it about friggin' Donald Trump. Like, listen, Mel, I'm passionate about not feeding narcissism, right? And everyone who just was making their campaign about taking a crack at this guy, Like,
Right.
no, because we have issues and we have problems. Like, this is then just going to be a battle of ego, which we don't need more of that because there's so many freaking casualties to everyone's freaking ego.
Right. We know he's bad.
We know.
We know.
We got
Really.
the point. Like,
and we're taking action on it. It's not like I'm saying I don't want to hear about it anymore. It's okay, we know he's bad. What are we doing to fix what he's broken? And then also to correct what he walked into, because we were a white supremacist nation when he took
didn't
office.
invent this.
No, he's a symptom.
But the thing that I will eternally appreciate is that he is the catalyst for so many people's radicalization who would have stayed complacent.
Yes, and I hope that they stick with it.
I hope so too.
When he's gone.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a new book, Managing the Motherload.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm here.
That's why you're here.
I do have a new book.
I was so excited that I was actually on the East Coast when you were having your book launch party. So I got to come be on your panel. This was just last week at the time we're recording this, which was super freaking fun. And I texted you after to say, you brought together such an epic room of people. And because you are who you are and you care about what you care about, as you just mentioned, and you prioritize Black women and Indigenous women, the feeling of being in a room that isn't run by whiteness, like it's a topic, it comes up, but it's not what runs the room. I've only experienced it a handful of times in the last year. Yeah. At that event, I went to this event, Decentering Whiteness in Yoga and Mindfulness Spaces, when I was visiting my family in Puerto Rico, because it was just us, a whole bunch of brown people, and then your event. That's it.
I appreciated that text so much. You weren't the only person who said that. It was really validating to hear it from Black women, because it wasn't an event about racial justice. That wasn't the topic.
No.
So it wasn't about Blackness either. But I did want to center Black women and decenter whiteness. And the room was filled with mostly white women. So let's be clear. And they were guests in my house. And that felt really, really good. And the panel, though I wasn't taking account on who I could have on the panel in terms of their racial background, it ended up being only one white woman on the panel. Mm-hmm. There was you, and then my friend Tamala, who's Black. There was Nasia Walsh, who wasn't able to be there because she has something else, but she's a Black woman. And then another businesswoman, Denise Woodard, who is half Korean, half Black. Yeah. So it was, it felt good. And I challenge anyone to tell me when they've ever seen this before, a panel that isn't about race, that has mostly people of color on it.
Yeah.
Never happens. So
yeah, it felt so good, and just goes to something that I hadn't noticed until maybe 2 years ago, which is that literally my nervous system relaxes when I'm in more diverse spaces. And as a white passing person who is welcomed in just about anywhere and not necessarily blatantly othered the way some people are, it hadn't dawned on me.
There's a different vibe. I don't know if white women can feel it. I don't know if they felt the difference, but for the women of color, right, there was a difference. There is an ease. There's a familiarity.
Yeah.
There's permission to be yourself.
That's the big thing. I felt like on your panel, I was, not that I was super irreverent, but I really was just entirely full Elizabeth, I was being silly. I was saying whatever. I cursed a couple of times.
All of us were.
I know.
Everybody. And I was so happy, particularly that Tammy felt comfortable, because she was really the one that I did this book launch for. She has a book club called Sisters with Aspiration Book Club. You can find it on Facebook. I hope you'll link it in the show notes. She has this book club, and we were raising money for that. And I wanted her to feel seen, heard, and comfortable to be herself. And she rocked it. She had the best time.
It was so fun. I got to sit next to her. We were so happy to meet each other. It was great.
She's great.
I love that. And, anyone listening, if anyone feels uncomfortable, or if you're a white woman and, and if you're feeling that stir of discomfort, it could be because you're so accustomed to things being centered on you, right? Or like your needs or your experience being the norm. We've talked about that a lot on the podcast over the last couple of years. But it's, to me, I find it to be such a relief when other people can get like the attention and the spotlight and the recognition that they so deeply and obviously deserve.
Yeah. And there's an ache for me too, though, in that. And when I was really thinking about the purpose of this panel, and I said it to the guests, that Tamala, I'll say her full name, Tamala Gordon, she is really, truly is the most brilliant writer I know. I've had the pleasure of seeing things that she's written that has not been published yet. And she's so brilliant. She's so insightful. She's so funny. She's so real. She is in her, what's called an unshifting. So removing herself from the white gaze or playing to the white gaze and really only speaking to and for Black people. And she does not get the recognition she deserves. And it's not for lack of trying. It's that as a fat Black woman with natural hair, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to be seen. So it's frustrating for me as someone who is not as talented a writer, I'm just not, to have this celebration of my second published book. And it's not that I feel undeserving, because I know what it took to get there, but she should also be in this space.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what? This is so messed up.
Yeah. There was something I crossed on Facebook this morning about someone getting fired for switching to their natural hair. And I was like, that's so fascinating because, and again, things that I never realized were, I'm not Black in any capacity, so I'm not going to make that a direct comparison, but things that I never realized were part of my experience as well, that I just didn't think. But the number of years that I spent straightening my hair whenever I was going to go to anything where I was supposed to look nice or professional, and just never thought about it.
Like that's the expectation.
Like that's cleaner, or that's like better, or that's like nicer or more put together.
More professional.
And this, my natural curly hair, is a mess.
Yes. The hair that grows out of your head is somehow wrong.
Yeah. It's so funny. So
I purposely didn't wear makeup to my event the other night, and I did get a blowout because I'm bad at my hair. So I did get a blowout. I got a little trim and a blowout. And which is fine too. Wear your extensions, wear your weave, straighten it, whatever you want to do, but everything is acceptable. But I was thinking about hiring a makeup artist, and I'm thinking about the money and the effort and the time it was going to take that day and how hurried everything was going to be. And I did have press to do before that. I had to go shoot a video and an interview. And I just said, this isn't me. This isn't a priority. So I did my own makeup, which is concealer. What I'm wearing now, my concealer. I got to fill in those brows because they're tragic. I balded them. They're not natural. I plucked them, and a little mascara. And you know how we did in the 90s. And it felt really good. It felt really good to be able to open and close my eyes.
Yeah. You used this word on one of my posts recently. I think it was the one I was talking about canceling my Equinox membership after finding out that one of the big investors was hosting a fundraiser for Donald Trump, and just being like, listen, there is so much that we don't have power of, that we can't influence. Like, something we really can do is vote with our dollars. So if we find out that our dollars might be funding something that goes against our integrity, stop putting our dollars there. And you used the word divest, which I loved, because we always talk about invest in yourself, invest in your future. What are you divesting from? I love that.
And that's in every area of our lives, not just our dollar, because sometimes 100%. People look at vote with your dollar as being a very privileged statement because people don't have the options to shop around or whatever. So you just do what you can, and where you can, going yogic principle, do no harm or as little harm as possible. It's like, where am I contributing to the harm, and where can I roll it back? And do that within your ability. But divest from Trump posts, divest from social media that makes you feel terrible and doesn't compel you to take action,
Yeah.
not in a fragility way, but just
Yes.
like, this is absolutely doing nothing. Like, I know this thing already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had shared something, it was from a therapist. I forget who it was. On my Insta stories the other week about unfollow anything that doesn't make you feel good. And a couple of people were like, well, what about like social justice educators or whatever? And I'm like, there's a million ways to get a social justice education. Right. So like, you don't have to consume it that way. Like, I'm not saying, like you're saying, I'm not saying look away from anything. I'm just saying, if this is going to hijack your day in an unuseful, unproductive way, like you're saying, it's not inspiring you to take action. It's inspiring you to curl up in a ball on the couch and not do anything. Don't follow that shit on Instagram.
Right. And then discernment, right? Check in. Why is this challenging
Exactly.
me? Why do I feel bothered by this? So if it's, the same woman that confronted me at the women's circle after when we were having the conversation, she said that she had to put down white fragility because it didn't resonate with her. And I had to remind her that a white woman wrote that book. And while I want everybody to get their social justice education from Black and Indigenous women, point blank, period, that's for me, I believe that the information in white fragility is very good. Like, she delivered it that I feel like it should be palatable to white people. And I asked her, does a teacher have to resonate with you for you to learn from them? And she looked confused, but because I guarantee then anybody I send her to is not going to inspire her to take the action that will actually do something, right?
Well,
like, she might knit a pussy hat, but beyond that, I don't think that she's really interested in social justice.
Right. I know the way I learn. A teacher does have to resonate for me.
So, but what do you mean by that resonate? What do you like? Because this, what do you mean by that?
Their way of holding space, their methods of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'm a facilitation snob.
Look, I don't want to be abused.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I don't want to be talked down to.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, right? That someone's holding space. The term safe space always gets an asterisk next to it because no one is safe for everyone all the time, right? I like when, some people say safer. Michelle Cassandra Johnson, who's been on the podcast, creating safer spaces, right? Or some people say brave spaces, whatever you want it to be. But so for example, this actually came up at my workshop this past weekend. Many years ago in 2011, 2012, I read Mama Gina's first two books. Mm-hmm. And like her way of writing and like how she is so not for me. But there was just something about like the information in there that I was like, all right, I can get past the feather boas and take this in. And so when her book Pussy came out, I was like, all right, I was buckling up to do the same thing. Like, okay, I get it. Like her style, the way she talks, not really for me, but I'll check it out for the information. I couldn't even get through like 3 or 4 chapters. And I was like, okay, like it's distracting sometimes, right? If it distracts, like I'm here for the learning, I'm here for the information. That's what I'm committed to. But if the delivery is distracting, like I just got to find someone who I could just get what I need,
Yeah. And I think we're on the same page. And then there's like this different levels of discomfort. Yeah. And am I being challenged because I'm a white woman that's not willing to look at my inherent bias? Right. I'm not willing to hear ugly things, right? I'm not willing to hear the truth of a Black woman when she speaks it, and believe her experience. There's that. And there's like, I know I'm not going to enjoy a Mama Gina event. And it's not, and I know so many of my friends have been through it and have been like my dear friend, Kate Northrup loves her.
Yeah.
Not my thing. I'm not picking up the book.
Yeah.
But I have been very challenged by certain teachers who I would say I wouldn't particularly call them a friend. I do resonate with their style because I like to hear the truth.
Same.
I'm there to change, right? Or learn, transform. Mm-hmm. And some people aren't. Some people, like the woman after the circle, and I'm using her as an example, but again, she's just a symptom of something that is very pervasive throughout to the white women spiritual circles, white women in general, is that she wasn't asking me a question. She wanted me to tell her that she was being a good white woman. Mm-mm. And that was something I wasn't willing to do.
Because she wasn't, first of all.
You know what? I don't know what good even means.
Yeah.
And in terms of white women, there's white women who are doing the work. I don't care what stage you are in. You're all in the same boat. It's a lifetime of work.
Yeah.
And then there's white women who aren't doing the work. That's it.
That's basically.
Yeah. And in other ways, we're all kind of in that boat. There's people that are working on their anti-Blackness and working toward anti-racism, or they're not. There's no neutrality.
And, you and I have talked about this. We've talked about it in different conversations on the podcast too. I've literally learned so much about all these other isms, racism or white supremacy. Isms or aces, like however the word ends, right? Mm-hmm. Through my experiences with men too, because like it all functions the same way. It's all narcissism. It's all superiority. It's all power over. Messed up power dynamics. It's all one group thinks they're better than another or is entitled or whatever. So it's so fascinating to me to tie those threads. Like every time I have an experience with like men, I'm like, yeah, this is the same. This functions like that. So I will never necessarily have the same exact experience as different people from different cultures, right? Yeah. But I can go, this is this feeling, right? Of someone thinking they're entitled to you or they're better than you or they get to have something and you don't just because get the hell out of here with all of that mess.
I'm telling you, I want to tell you about education I'm getting right now. Where I didn't necessarily think I needed it, and I did. I'm reading Roxane Gay, and her book, is it Hunger? Is it Hungry or Hunger? Okay, Hunger. And, my older sister has struggled with her weight her whole life, and her husband as well. And I wouldn't consider myself to be a fat phobic person. And I say all the things that white people say about Black people. Like I have fat friends and my sister's fat. I've never experienced it. And listening to Roxane Gay speak, reading her book, such a deeper appreciation and an understanding of where I have a lot more work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've had that come up for me several times at workshops. When I'm teaching Wild to Movement digitally, I'm constantly like cueing and factoring in that everyone's body is different, ability wise. But then also too, sometimes the shape of someone's body might prevent them from doing a certain thing a certain way. And so that's something I've been honing in. But then being at live workshops and having people in spaces, and then I can actually see someone is struggling with something for a particular reason, or that might even come up in someone's share. Like they felt shame wash over them because they tried to do a thing and they couldn't do a thing. Their stomach was in the way or something. And I'm like, oh, got it. I need to factor that into my cueing, right? Like if for any reason your body won't move this way or can't get into this position, do this instead or do something that feels better for you, I have I've had that learning curve as well.
Yeah. I'm incredibly privileged in the way that I've never been limited physically from doing anything. And while I got it intellectually, I can never feel it. I can never feel it, but I had and still have a lot of learning to do. And it's a hard education. I'm seeing things come up in me that I didn't even know, that unconscious bias. 100%. I didn't even know was there.
I was having a conversation with a friend recently about pronouns and gendered terms and gender neutrality and fluidity and all these things. And this is a very air quote woke friend of mine. And some of the things they were saying, I was like, wouldn't have expected this person to be saying that thing. I was like, okay, they have a little, we all do in whatever categories, but I was like, okay, this person has a little work to do on this. Cause it was it's easy to not want to engage with something that doesn't affect you,
We're all swimming in the same waters, right? We're all swimming
we're breathing in the same secondhand smoke.
Yeah. White supremacy, anti-Blackness, misogyny. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
And what it really means to be woke, I guess, is to understand that there's so much to learn, to constantly be open to being taught, to being exposed, and having to just look hard at yourself. It is daily work. It is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still watch a lot of Netflix, but I also get in my anti-racism work every day. So I think everyone can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked what you said. You just said something and it flew right out of my mind. What was it? Give me a second. Oh, be willing to be exposed. To me, this is the biggest relief in the world. I would much rather someone be like, yo, that thing you said, not cool. Here's why. And then I could be like, oh, thank you. I will never have to do it again now. You know, you saw, so I'll share a story. And then I want to dig in a little bit more to the things I actually wanted to ask you. But this is us, right? Like this is always the stuff coming up in our conversations because we're always working on this and we know we could chat with each other about this. This was so funny. Around Martin Luther King Day, I had shared an article that a woman named Hannah Drake wrote about, dear white people, please don't do this on Martin Luther King Day. You know, just like a heads up a week ahead of time, you know? And then in the comments, a few of my white friends or followers were commenting, well, I centering themselves. And a Black female friend of mine sent me a DM and she's like, yo, I know your heart's in the right place. I know you're doing your work. So I'm taking the time to let you know that what's happening on your post is literally exactly what the woman is talking about in the article. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even see it. Thank you. And then I learned, right? If we're talking about an issue and there's no ask about someone's experience, when someone goes in and shares their experiences, they're centering themselves instead of the issue. So a couple weeks ago, I posted something about fragility. It was the white fragility bingo. And this woman commented, centering herself. She won. Friggin' bingo. Right? And she leaves a comment about how important she thinks this is. And she's read the book, White Fragility, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, so-and-so. You know, I've been called out on this. So I just, you know, want to point it out here that when I'm sharing about an issue, I'm not interested in people centering themselves or their experiences with it. I want to keep the focus on the issue. And her response was like, I know, right? Blah, blah, blah. And she was like, went on to say all these things, like showing how much she knows. And I was like, I'm very confused by your response. I made my comment because you were doing it. And then she lost it. Well, I just think it's a shame that I can't talk about how I feel that. And I was like, I.
Can I tell you something without sounding like glib about it?
Yes.
I almost, there has to be a manual. There has to be a script somewhere that's floating around that you don't know about. Like how to really F up with Black women and women of color. Yeah. This is what you say. Because when that woman walked over to me, and I was sitting there with my white girlfriend who invited me to the circle, but she's done a lot of work and she's still in her work. Mm-hmm. When she walked up and said, can I ask you a question? We both looked at each other.
Took a deep breath.
Because we knew. We knew the script. We knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's that whole, like, I don't know why I can't speak because you've been speaking all this time.
Yes.
And now it's someone else's turn.
Also, just listen. It's like, it's really okay. Like, it's just listen. And again, I want to draw the parallels for people who are listening who maybe haven't done as much work and don't get this. Like, so if you're a woman listening and you've had this experience with men, like mansplaining to you, it's the same thing, right? Like, why is this person feeling like they can require an explanation from you? You owe them an explanation or an education? Or have you ever considered, oh, I'm just being devil's advocate? No. Why? Like,
why?
Leave me alone.
Why?
Like, that's how I feel, you know, just like, leave me alone.
Why is a good question.
Can I live? Why? Yeah, that's a great, like, if you feel like engaging, right? Why? I'm so curious why you're asking me this. Or I'm really curious what makes you think that this is an appropriate thing to ask me.
My work right now, because I hold a space that has mostly white women in it, but I do have a diverse space. Mm-hmm. So for a very long time, for whatever reason. I don't know if it was a need to be liked, a need for harmony, to make money. I don't know what it was, but I really wanted to make everyone comfortable. And that meant that I was letting white women do harmful things in the space because I was addressing it, but I was giving them too much. I was going back and forth while allowing it to be witnessed by women that could be hurt by that. Yeah. So my work is to learn how to not do that. I have many Black women that are darker than me, Black women who have far different experiences than me. Right. And that can that navigate these situations much better than I could as my accountability partners. And they're willing to do that because we're girlfriends. Yeah. And we're colleagues. I also have a trans girlfriend who helps me in that way because I know she'll be very honest with me and call me out when I say things wrong. I say things wrong all the time. And when I'm called out, it's always thank you. Yeah. Because I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to do that. Yeah. So
you want to ostracize and exclude people.
Yeah. But I'm in that work. I'm in that work. I'm
with you.
Going through my own unshifting and I need that help.
Yeah. That's what I say. People know that I'm not into unsolicited feedback, but I have repeatedly solicited people's feedback on these things. Yes. If you see me messing something up, that's always solicited. It's always solicited, Your commentary on how my body looks on all these other things, no, that is not solicited, right? But you see me doing something harmful or saying some shit I shouldn't be saying, trust that I don't know what I don't know. And when you tell me, I'm going to be like, thank God, thanks for letting me know. I'm going to apologize if it's appropriate. And I'm going to show you I'm sorry by not doing that shit again.
Just in the past week, I commented on someone's body publicly and I was very embarrassed. And I knew I didn't have to apologize because the person is cool with me, but I reached out and apologized. And then today on this equity task force call, I used the word insane to describe something. And that's something I'm really trying to get away from. And at the end of the call, I was like, nobody heard it. And and Ray's like, we could just let this go. But I'm like, I have to apologize. Because I do want people to trust me and to feel comfortable around me. Not because I want to be liked. Yeah. I want to be in community with people. Yeah. So
I hear you. And I'm with you. So, continuing with our thread of sensitive topics, per usual.
I can't wait.
I want to talk about consent with children. So your book is about managing the motherload. It's not a parenting book, though, which I appreciate. So can you tell people listening, how do you distinguish between a parenting book and what you talk about in your book?
So a parenting book would be parenting advice. How to get your kid to go to sleep at night without a fight or sleep through the night, which still, I don't know how to do that. Either vegetables, whatever, a parenting advice book. I don't feel qualified to do that. In the book, I talk about an estrangement that I was having with my oldest son at the time that I started writing the book, or I was asked to write the book. And it was my hesitation. That was the cause of my hesitation in writing it. So my book is about motherhood and my experience with motherhood, what I've learned, how I've learned to do some practical things like eat better and sleep better. That's the beginning chapter is eat, sleep, exercise, or whatever, move. And then it gets into how to go after my dreams, how to find balance in my relationships, how I did it, not how you can do it. It's how I did it. And this is what I used. And if you want to use it too, maybe it'll work for you.
You said something at the book launch party that I really found to be so beautiful, and I felt kind of emotional, shocker, about that being a mother is you've spent more of your life being a mother at this point than not, just by a couple years.
I was a mother before I was a woman, and nowadays
that's what you said.
I've been a mother longer than I've been not a mother.
Yeah. And I just thought that was so tender and beautiful, but also such a reminder. Obviously I don't have kids, but I have such a compassion and care for the mothers in our audience because I've done so much work on my own, mother wound healing, and we've so many mothers, and it's just such an incredibly hard thing to do that people just assume you know what to do. that you'll just know it automatically because now there's a baby in your arms, even if no one taught you. Or in some cases, really, your examples of it were so unhealthy, unsafe, dysfunctional, abusive, or whatever. I'm not saying like you, Bex. I'm saying you, the general population. So I have so much care and respect for mothers. And I have some really dear friends who are mothers, single mothers especially. It's just like the amount that these women hold together and are responsible for, and how they're not supported or respected in some cases. It's just like, I don't know. I just care about that so much. And so there was just something that when you said that, I was like, I respect and appreciate that so much, that you've just, in this case, time on the field is not always an indicator of being better at something, but there is really so much gravity to that experience.
There is gravity to the experience, but again, it's, you get what you give. And for a long time in motherhood, I was on autopilot because of different situations in my life, being in an abusive marriage, being very deep in my depression, not getting the proper treatment, not taking care of myself. So I was moving through motherhood very disconnected. And it wasn't until I started doing real work on myself, understanding the requirement of me having respect for my children as their own beings, doing the work to heal my mother wound. And I talk about this a lot in the book because dang, if we don't all become our mothers in some way, and we either have to root that out or deal with it or embrace it or whatever. But I was very lucky to have things happen in my life that so mirrored what happened with my mother. And I think that's kind of how it works out between my mother and me. That I was able to look through the lens of the child and say, oh, this is what I'm doing wrong, or this is how I need to be seen or heard. So it was a easier time of healing with my son because I knew exactly what to do because I knew what I needed then.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just also think one of the cool, unique things about your experience, not unique meaning that no one else has had this experience, but you have had 2 sets of children with a big gap in between with 2 different partners. So you actually, your breadth of experience in some cases is, you, like you said, you were kind of going through the motions, and then you were a lot more like present and aware in a healthier relationship, and you could see, and you've had experiences. So I really wanted to ask you, I know with mothers at many different points in the journey, one of the biggest things that people deal with is guilt. And then as people become aware of how they've been impacted in their childhoods, and they look at their own kids and they're like, oh my God, am I messing my kids up? Or I have messed my kids up. or you're in a spot where, like you were saying, someone is estranged or someone has distanced themselves, or like they're doing their own healing and they're friggin' pissed at you because that's just the stage that has to happen. How did you alchemize, metabolize, or like deal with all of that?
When I was going through the estrangement with my mother, for the 3 months before she died, I during that time I posted something online and I was complaining about her doing something with my kids that I didn't like. And Elena Brower, which some people in your audience might know, she's a yoga teacher. She reached out to me. We had a phone call, and she said, if you don't fix what's broken with you and your mother, you are doomed to repeat it with your children. And I was so angry with her. I was like, how dare she? She did ask me permission. I did engage her in the conversation. I was like, how dare she say something like that to me? And I think that my anger came from a place of somewhere deep down understanding that that was true.
Yeah.
So I didn't get that chance to heal that with my mother while she was alive, because she passed away suddenly shortly after that conversation. I've been working since her death, though, to heal the relationship. I believe that I can still do that. But those words just really stuck with me. And so when things like guilt come up, I examine where it's coming from. Like, is this rational? Did I do something wrong? Or did I do something that was harmful or not, not getting me to where I want to be with these kids? And then I do something about it. So I think for me, the cure for guilt is action. So when I screamed at the top of my lungs to my kid on the way to school, on March 8th, 2019, this year, and was like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? All the worst things to say. You're killing me, right?
Mm-hmm.
The worst things to say that night. And I felt sick, and rightly so. And I called him into my bedroom and I said, I'm ashamed. And that was ugly. And it was a side of me that exists and I wish you never saw. And this will never happen again. And today I called and made an appointment with a therapist, and that's what got me back into therapy.
Mm.
And I have been anger, rage, sober, because for me it was an addiction. What's wrong with everybody else in my life? Why is everything happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a sobriety issue. I'm sober from that since that day.
Oh,
and so it's feel the guilt. Where's it coming from? Is it rational? Am I doing something wrong? What can I do? What's in my control right now? And then always have the conversation, age appropriate, of course, to the child's understanding, and not putting it on them and not giving them too much burden, but just acknowledging, like, I messed up.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas about how we could do this better next time? I'm willing to hear it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Kids are so smart. They're not necessarily mature yet because they're little people, they're new in life, but they're so smart and they know how they want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
So they will tell you if you leave the door open for them to speak honestly. And for that, you always have to be prepared to hear the worst thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that over the past couple of years, I've heard really scary things from my kids that made me want to jump in, rescue them, correct them, save them. And I've had to step back because it would have broken a trust.
Yeah.
And messed up the rapport if I didn't. But so you have to be prepared too. Like, you have to be honest with yourself. Am I willing to hear the answer? But from like the time they can talk, like 2 years old up, kids know how they want to be treated, and they'll tell you when something isn't good if you allow them to.
Yeah.
You have to create that relationship.
You said something about age appropriate. How do people know what's age appropriate and what's not?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I had a fairly traumatic childhood. I can go back and tell you the things that really hurt me when I was 5, hurt me when I was 8, humiliated me when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
So I do go back to that. I'm like, if my mom talked to me about sex right now, if she said made love right now, would that really freak me out? It totally would freak me out. I will never say make love to my children because I know that would bother them. So a lot of it's just coming from really checking in with myself, intuition, and saying, is this kid ready to hear it? Do they want to hear it? And is this too heavy for them? Which is the biggest one. Huge. Is this too heavy? Because kids can hear a lot of big ideas and concepts because you have to talk about them. I just had a talk with my trans son who's 8 years old about racism and transphobia and police brutality. That was a hard conversation. So I asked myself, how could I not overburden him, at least without giving him the tools to feel like he can do something? Yeah. So in that conversation where I thought this is really heavy, I also told him what he can do.
Yeah.
To help.
So
that was a lot. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. And it goes into something else that I wanted to ask you about, which is consent with kids.
Yeah. So we're getting back to that.
Yeah. Because I will say this is one of the things that was really traumatizing for me as a child. It's called being parentified, where the adults just treat you like you're the other adult in the house. And they're sharing things with you that you can't process, that you don't understand. But as a child, you can feel that something is wrong. And so you start to adjust your behavior around helping and then caregiving the adults when like you're the one. And not realizing, so I didn't realize for many years that there's emotional neglect in that, right? Mm-hmm. And so because my needs are not being prioritized and I'm the developing child, right? Like the adults, they have needs and stuff, but that can't be put on me. I have no capacity for that shit, right? But you'll develop it because kids are super adaptable. So, but consent, I don't know. That just feels like there's so many things that I didn't consent to. Not physically when I was a kid. That wasn't really the issue. Although, like the same, like some people like give your aunt a hug or whatever, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm just super curious of like the role consent plays I mean, this is a parenting question, but I don't know.
Well, to tell you what we do. So it's, especially, well, there's simple things. We talk a lot about consent when it comes to touch.
Mm-hmm.
Tickling, touching, sitting too close to someone, personal space. We talk about this all the time. Anyone who has kids knows, or multiple kids knows, like the back seat, like he's touching, he's breathing me at me, he's looking at me. It's like
Yeah.
oh my God. I posted on my Instagram last night because we're touching each other, and I'm like, we're in a king size bed. My God, just move over. So
Yeah.
it's, it's those types of things. Checking in with them, how they feel before you have a hard conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay to talk about this right now? My middle son and I have a number system, so it's 0 to 3, and for a very specific reason, which I won't get into. But it's about his moods,
Mm-hmm.
like how sad he is, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I know what action to take. So we don't have to have a whole conversation about it because he doesn't like to do that. He doesn't want to talk. He writes me letters. It's a lot about like understanding how people want to communicate. I want my kids always to be open with me, and we need to have that communication for safety and other reasons. But like, how do we do it? How do you want to do it? What do you feel comfortable with? And we've gotten a lot of help from professionals. This was his therapist's idea, to like talk about this number system. So I can say, so instead of, hey, is there something wrong? Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong. It seems like something's wrong. No, I say there's nothing wrong. Hey, you don't have to snap at me. Like, I'm just asking you. I'm just concerned. Instead of that back and forth, it's, hey, something going on? Do you want to throw me a number? I'm going to get a 1. Okay, cool. So I know he's safe. He's just feeling like he doesn't want to communicate,
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of things like that. And also like this right now, like I'm talking about my kids. We are in constant conversation about what I am allowed to talk about, not just online, but even between friends. So yesterday, one of my kids shared something with me that was good. It was positive and beautiful. And I was really excited that they shared it with me. But I asked if it was okay if I shared it with their stepfather. Even though it was like most parents would be like, hey, look at this cool thing my kid did.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, I mean, I guess so. And to that I said, it sounds like you're not ready. Just let me know when you are. Let me know when it's okay. So consent is important, and we don't get to judge what's okay and not okay. We don't get to judge which secrets or which, I see parents all the time posting their kids' grades on the internet. I don't care if it's all A's. You ask first.
Yeah.
You ask first. Pictures, stories, ask first.
How do you handle that with the littler kids when the kids were littler and they couldn't really give you permission?
Yeah, I mean, that's tricky because I don't know if I'm handling that right. So the kids, I ask them if it's okay to take a picture, and I say, I'm going to post this online. They don't understand the ramifications of that. It comes up a lot around Sonny, my trans son, who is online, and he talks about his story really publicly, and he likes to be identified as a trans boy. He likes to share. But he at one point was living as a girl. And I know that as he gets older, that's out there. Mm-hmm. So if he ever wanted to go into a place of anonymity and just live as a man, not a trans man, people could find out. So that's tricky for me. But just ask, and then also ask yourself, when this kid's in high school, will they want to see this on the internet?
Yeah.
They want their friends to see it. Which
is such an interesting thing that we never had to deal with, right?
Right. Yeah. But you will rarely see my teenagers, or my oldest is 21 now. You will rarely see them because they're just like, nah, I don't want you to talk about me. But last night I was FaceTiming my daughter who's 21, and it was fun. And I was like, I'm screenshotting this. And she's like, whatever. And it was so, but we have that understanding and that relationship.
Yeah.
So,
this is reminding me, that's funny, actually. A good friend of mine, her son is 7, and she'll post like funny little things he says online, and I was just saying to her, I'm like, man, this is so cool. Because in my mind, I actually really appreciate these little snippets of like recordings of things my parents have from when I was little. because I don't actually remember a lot of things from like, I did a really good job of like blocking out. There's like a chunk of years that were like the most challenging in my household. So I don't remember a lot of things. Like other people, like my mom will remember, my brother, like if someone asks me something, I have to piece it together. I call them. So I do actually appreciate like certain recorded things so I could like see who was I, right? Because everything in retrospect is not accurate, right? So, so I'm like, it's so cool to my friend. I'm like that you're catching these little moments of the like the development of his personality. And like, if you ever wanted to put this in like a scrapbook or you know what I mean, or just like compile them in one place, he could kind of see how he's evolved and how he's the same or how he's changed. You're like, I just thought that's a cool thing. But it could, I guess, also be
and sometimes too, just to make them not searchable. I mean, my older boys are not on social media, so it's not an issue. My oldest daughter is, but she's like not that into it.
Yeah.
So I'll just say the biggest little, the middle little, the 16-year-old, the 21-year-old. I use that just if someone that doesn't know us is looking.
Yeah. Yeah. My friend does this too. She does not write her son's name.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so you said something about the book, and I talk about the laws of nature all the time. I love talking about my plants. So I know your book is centered around the seed cycle. What is the seed cycle?
The seed cycle is fertile ground is the first phase. Then a seed is planted, cracking open, nourishing the seed, and then full bloom.
Oh my God.
So that I'm very inspired by nature, but also by my mother's garden. I have a black thumb. I cannot grow anything. And I live on 8 acres with no garden. So talking about it as it relates to motherhood and comparing motherhood to the garden and really understanding, for me, the biggest lesson from it, I'll give you a spoiler, is that mothering is such a partnership, cooperation of nature and nurture. There's my part that's in my control. And then there's the sun, the wind, the rain, the little critters that come up and stomp all over your seedlings, like all of that. And it's a really beautiful and liberating thing when you understand that your child does not belong to you. And there's a certain level of influence and nourishment that is required of you. But beyond that, you have to let it happen. And I learned that lesson the hard way with my son when we were during our estrangement, which we're just creeping back to we're on good terms and seeing each other, once a month, texting once a week, which might be as good as it gets. And I'm okay with that, right? That's what it is. But when I understood that and when I applied that and when I understood that he was a grown adult man, at least as society says, and that it's no longer even my job to advise him on what to do, just to be a soft landing if he needs it. And that it was all up to me to do the work because that's all that's in my control. I got that help and I figured it out. And it was me fixing me that heals or is healing our relationship.
Right.
He didn't have to do a thing. So yeah, that's the seed cycle.
I like this thing here though, that you're saying like the combination of nature and nurture. I was in Chicago last weekend and having lunch with a friend who is who identifies as non-binary and is very consciously and intentionally raising their child in that way, with that mindset and with that structure. And beautiful. What they were saying is how fascinating it is that even though they're so diligent about that in their own home, the child, who I think is 3, is already has the norms, boy, girl.
Of course. When Sunny, transition is a bad word for it, but that's what people say. But Sunny didn't transition because he's always been a boy. And really he always identified as a boy privately. And so when he transitioned, or when he decided to use he, him pronouns and be called Sunny, there wasn't a hair change, a toy change, a clothes change. He looked the same. Everything stayed the same. Yeah. Nothing changed except his name and his pronouns. So when he decided that to vocalize, I'm a boy, he did it by wanting boy clothes. I'm holding up quotation marks for people listening. He wanted to shop in the boy department. He wanted to play with boy toys. Like, he became, his masculinity manifested in a very traditional sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that concerned me because, and we're receiving help with this. We have, like a trans parent counselor guide. It's amazing.
I'm
Like, the
so glad
resources that are
that
out there.
exists.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't, and it's like just becoming a thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're lucky to live by CHOP Hospital, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which has an amazing gender clinic. We're very, very, very lucky. I know people are listening from all over the country who do not have the resources that we do. So we were concerned, and I'm like, is he doing this because this is how he thinks he's supposed to be? This is what's going to make him acceptable.
Right, right.
And if he starts shifting and becoming fluid and wanting to wear, his old shirt that has the unicorn sparkle on it,
Mm-hmm.
is that a problem? Should we discourage him from that to make it easier for him?
Right.
And no, we can't discourage him. We can't do that. That's the short answer. And and to that, we were talking about this a little bit before the call. How do we navigate this? It's really about that constant communication and checking in, of asking why, or how does it make you feel? Or what does being a boy mean to you? What does being a boy mean to you? I know what it means to me, but I have all this influence. Like, what does it mean to you? And you'll get really interesting, enlightened, true answers from your kids.
That's
They
a cool way.
know themselves better than anyone. Yeah.
I love that, because that was my curiosity. So I don't even have to ask you, but it was like, how do you approach these things in a non-shaming way, and in a way that won't make them feel judged, even if that's not your intention, right? Because intent and impact, and sometimes parents have their own fears going into things. And even like you said, like just that quick little phrase, make it easier for them. I imagine that to be one of the most difficult parts of parenting, is trying to prepare a child to live in this world, but without like dampening their own spirit, right? Because we don't need to place our jadedness or whatever on, like, maybe they could have an entirely different experience. Who knows?
Yeah, there's a lot of something that I had to be taught by that person that you were speaking about, that you had lunch. This person also taught me something. We have that person in common as a friend. To not say it's okay when they say something's wrong. Do not talk them out of their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Don't center yourself in your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
When Sunny was talking about different aspects of growing up, I'll just say, and changes that he had concerns about, I just, instead of telling him, oh, it's going to be fine, we're going to take care of it, which was my initial response. And I only said that once because it wasn't fine, because he wasn't fine.
Right.
So it was, okay, so what's the concern? These are the different things that I've heard that we can do. Do you want to get more information about it? What do you think happens? There was a conversation about how babies are made and who has to have babies and who doesn't have to. Like, he thought that women who grow up have to have babies. That was a concern of his. So it was, so that's what it is. If I just said, oh, you don't have to have a baby if you don't want to, he wouldn't have understood.
Right.
So it was like, so what do you think happens? It's just a lot of questions, because here's the thing. I actually don't know.
Right.
Like, I'm not a trans person.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how much I read, I'm never going to have that experience. So I don't know. I have to ask him. And I definitely don't have his fears. I have very different fears around the same thing. So lots of questions.
I always enjoy talking to you because I love nuance and complexity, and we can explore the things and acknowledge that we might have our way of doing some things, that we certainly don't have the right answers for all the people, for all the things, but we're always exploring, willing to mess up, happy when we don't, according to some people.
Oh, life is good and learning is fantastic.
I agree. Okay, y'all, the new book is Managing the Motherload. Is there a website, managingthemotherload.com for it?
It's motherloadbook.com.
Motherloadbook.com. It's great. I obviously haven't read it yet. I just got it in my grimy paws last week. Do you ever finish books anymore? This is the last thing I'm going to ask you. Do you finish books?
You know that I have anxiety,
I do.
and you know that I'm very particular in the way that I start things and stop them. I have to do it to completion. So
You
I
do.
not only read every book, I read the index, the
Wow.
prologue, the notes.
Amazing. I did it. I do some of those things, but I didn't know that part. So
Yeah.
got it. I don't really finish books anymore. So
I know you don't, and
I
that's
keep
great too.
asking people. I'm curious. All right. I love you. Follow Beck's Life on Instagram. What's the link for the Facebook group?
Blissed, BLISSED, in community.com, blissedInCommunity.com. It'll
Amazing.
take you there.
So there's that too, if you want more Becks in your life. Thank you again so much. See you later.
Thank you.
Healing isn't a thing you ever actually finish doing. So while I'm not done, this summer really felt like crossing a healing threshold, which I'm sure some of you listening can relate to. When you've been doing so much work on yourself and finally some things just like click into place, all the practice, all the integration, all the embodiment, and things start to look and feel different.